how, these guys are cybersecurity students or whatever, so we wanted to go a little bit deep, but not too deep, type of thing. So we were requested to talk about OSINT, so we kind of decided to do passive OSINT in the way that we do it, and we wanted to really fit into our methodology. So you're probably going to hear me say it a lot. We want to get away from a lot of the talks that just focus on tools. Yes, there's going to be tools on there, but if you go to like Vimeo, or go to SlideShare, look up OSINT, there's like 3,000 and some talks, right? And a lot of them are just about use this tool to do this. So we wanted to fit this into our methodology. We're thinking about making a series of these possibly. It kind of walks through our whole methodology from starting with OSINT all the way to the end, what we do for persistence, what we do for lateral movement. Some of them may be a little bit different. If you've seen a talk with Val Smith and who's the guy? Menace Boy? That one guy, really famous guy, Menace Boy. Oh yeah. So they didn't talk about kind of like different ways to do persistence, lateral movement. They weren't really focused on cool big hacker tools. So we kind of got to follow that one. So looking forward to it.
Okay. So before we go to the next slide, we're not doing this on behalf of our employers. So disclaimer: opinions are our own. We're just a couple of guys that talk about security. So there's no employer stuff. So if you hate our guts at the end of this, it's not my boss's fault.
Of course, we're spade wars, so don't say it. Just because we're spade wars.
So just we're a group that sits and talks about security. We do this in our free time. We do it at home. We do it at night. So this is kind of a product of personal research and other experiences. So,
who likes the logo? Anybody? Okay. There's actually dudes in India, like you outsource all this stuff, $50, and then like 3 or 4 for you. Just deal with it. Cheap outsource. So plug there. What was the other shameless plug? Oh, shameless plug before we get started on here. We do have an opening on our team. I want to put that out there. If you know anybody, I want to put this out there. You got to have skills, right? We don't like train people how to hack and stuff like that. You got to come in the door ready to go with something. I can code. I know low level C. I do reversing, something like that fits in. But if you are interested, come talk to us afterwards. We do have that available. It will be a contracting position if anybody's going.
Are you looking for more offensive or defensive?
Oh, strictly offensive is what we actually do. That being said, we are part of the CNDSP, so you hear me tell my guys all the time, we do offense for the purpose of making better defense. So we try the best we can to work with the folks that actually use CND on a daily basis, the analysis, but there's always, like any organization, challenges that we may face from time to time. So I'll leave that one right there. Caveats and notes. Yeah, so again, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We're not the first people talking about OSINT. Like I said earlier, there's 3,000 some talks out there. There's some really good ones, there's some really dumb ones, there's a lot to repeat. What we did again is look at a lot of that stuff. We do this all the time, right? DerbyCon just ended, they're posting the videos right now on Parenting. There was some really good talks there about OSINT. So following that vibe again, what was kind of missing, what did we not see in some of those talks? And that was kind of really tied to the methodology. That tends to happen. Here's this cool tool, and maybe it's kind of assumed, you follow methodology, you do whatever, and you don't need to talk about that, but maybe it's not. Maybe just, nobody really knows how to tie it back, or they have different things. So we're going to talk about our methodology, like I said a lot, how this fits in. Principles, methodology, again, I said it a lot. Tools, artifacts, data, are not intended to be comprehensive. Again, we're going to talk about a couple tools, but it's just a couple tools that we use. Please do not get tool specific and say, well, this tool does this. Yeah, every tool we're going to talk about probably has 16 different cousins that do the exact same thing. We're going to focus on the tool output and how that gives us actionable intelligence. Okay. Wow, sorry. Do you want to do it? No, it's easy. So we're going to focus on terminology, methodology, objectives. We're going to focus on establishing a baseline, what that means to us. Case study, creating actionable intelligence. You're going to hear a lot, actionable intelligence, right? That's a military thing. I know there's some Rangers and infantry type guys out there. That's my background. The Marine Corps is infantry. So it relates a lot, right? We're fighting a cyber war here. Cyber, right? That's the big thing, cyber warfare. We're doing that.
Bingo!
So a lot of the principles that we apply, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We've fought battles for a long, long time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of things. A lot of the same things apply, right, to cyber battle space. Oh, risk mitigations. Like we said, we only do it to be to make C and D better. That's why we exist, to really be integrated, not the us and them thing, right? So let's talk about some terminology, right? Vulnerability assessment. Everybody's heard that term, I assume, right? Or VAC, vulnerability assessment. Team does things, right? Typically, what do we think about when we say vulnerability assessment? Anybody interactive here? Give me an example. Vulnerability assessment.
Run Nessus.
Scanning, Nessus, Retina, right? ACAS. What's that?
Spirit used the R word.
Retina?
Yeah.
Well, it's there. What are we going to do? Right? So, vulnerability assessments, that's what we're talking about, right? I have vulnerabilities, everybody knows it. It's kind of just verifying what we know, right? CVEs are out there, IAVAs, new things come out, you gotta patch them. If you don't patch them, you're gonna get found out that you haven't patched it. We all know that, right? Okay, what's the problem? Patch cycle's not up to date, we don't have a good patch program, people don't know how to patch. I mean, the issues are endless, right, of how things don't get patched. It should at this point, right? It's 2014 almost. It should be something we don't even think about, right? We patch. There was this thing in Hercules that came out a few years ago. Remember, it was out in Retina Hercules. They were supposed to patch each other. We did an assessment in Europe for the Marine Corps and found Veritas backup exec agent. Remember that classic one? Got your root, right? Boop! Popped, it was on Cipher. So we popped that. This was before Cipher had gateways. So any domain admin meant we owned the entire CypherNet for the Marine Corps, right? Well, that's cool and all. But they were like, Veritas backup exec, I mean, this is old. Why is this not patched? When we did the outbrief, showed up, looked at their comm closet, it's sitting in the damn box that it was delivered in, not even the rack turned down, right? So, a million reasons why we don't patch. It seems silly, should be automatic. Vulnerability assessment, again, verifying what we already probably know. Let's get past that, okay? Penetration test, that's a bastardized word as well, right? Everybody says penetration test, and it means 13 different things, right, to 55 different people, if that makes sense. So, it does not mean you get your CEH and go out there and you're certified to do a penetration test, right? But it's basically like, for us, we look at penetration testing as, if you think about when the private sectors, what they do PCI compliance, those type of things, it's basically the next step beyond a vulnerability assessment where you say, okay, I know those vulnerabilities out there, but I find them, yes, there's a vulnerability, and now I'm going to verify that that vulnerability is really vulnerable by trying to exploit it, right? Again, we're doing things that we already know. Right? So it's good, it creates jobs, and people have things to do, and that's fun, but it doesn't really get us to the end goal of being truly secure, ground truth, right? We're just, again, verifying what we already know. So for us, full scope red team engagement, and red team, I'm just going to talk real quick on that. People use red team a lot of different ways too, right? Doing a red team does not mean you do source code analysis. Does not mean you do reversing and find it and then say, hey, that's exploitable, that's a red team. That's not red teaming. It's also now, being inside a network or given access to a network, and you're basically doing a LAN assessment where if you do exploit things and move lateral, that is not a red team assessment, right? You're basically doing a glorified blue team. Okay, full scope red team engagements for us, what it means is that you're doing anything and everything to gain access to your target system. And we like to say that we follow the enemy methodology as much as possible. But Nick can tell you, right, that the methodology pretty much hasn't changed in a couple thousand years, right? It's like the Chinese have done, hey, here's this thing, open it, sell macros, thank you, right? And 10, 15 years later, guess what, we're still doing it. We just did it recently, in fact, very recently.
Gabe, one of the big things of red team that people miss is to test those processes and procedures. If how you're going to react if you see it on your network.
Oh, yeah.
And then what do you do?
I mean, that's common sense, but sometimes that's lost on a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So So right, so I mean, red team is really supposed to be, if you're doing it together with an organization, and I come from a red team background, that's where I started when I got out of the Marine Corps, was working for the Marine Corps red team, and then for the Army red team. And what I found, like doing the red team for these DoD services, right, is you go to a red team, you own stuff, it's us versus them, you hand a report in, and that's it, right? You go away, and nobody ever sees you again. Maybe that report finds its way down to some sysadmin, and they look at it, and maybe they make sense of it, and they're able to fix a couple things. But along that chain, there's a lot of politics that happens. Procedures don't get taken care of, and really you come back and find the same thing again. As a red team guy, you're going, what's wrong with these people? I find the same thing every year. Well, really, it's not understanding what it takes to do C&D and what those policies and procedures are. So what we did is we went to we created a team that did red teaming and blended that. They were part of the C&DSP. So it wasn't a separate entity. They were organic to that C&DSP. And a lot of people will say automatically, well, you need separation. You need to not have inside knowledge for red team, right? Well, that's pretty silly. I mean, you can do these things without compromising the integrity of the operation, right? It really depends on how you tell that story. And if you can do an assessment with inside knowledge and show, regardless what knowledge you have, that anybody from the outside can do a particular set of actions and compromise something, that's really the key. Not focusing on, well, they had this or that or whatever. It's about finding and identifying the problems and fixing them, no matter what they are, right? So full scope, again, is physical, social, whatever. It really doesn't matter. Anything you can think of that somebody malicious would do, that's what we're trying to do. Of course, we unfortunately are really kind of pigeonholed what we can do. Chinese and the bad guys don't have restrictions, whereas most red teams do. So, test purpose and objectives. Why do we do what we do? What is the point? Is it to point out vulnerabilities to say, ha ha ha, MSA 067, I can still get that. Who cares? Right? That's pretty lame. Even the cool hacker stuff, right? Super elite ODA stuff. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Do I care if I can ODA something and the C&E folks can't see it? No, it's an ODA. They can't see it. I mean, it's dumb to think that that's cool, right? Is it some cool hacker trick that, let's say the sticky key thing, 5-time shift, they pulled out, and you guys much pulled that at your cyber guard exercise, which is pretty funny, right? But is that some cool elite hacker trick that says, I got you? No, I mean, come on, it's a stupid Windows feature. You have to have physical access to the box. So it's not about doing cool things like that and showing hacks if you will. It's like, what do you do? What can you do that will affect your organization? That's what it's really about, right? If we're talking about business and money and banks and stuff, right? Selling stuff, it's about their money and the process happening. And of course, banks have this threshold, right? If I get $5 million stolen from me and that's insured and I can cover this up and it costs less than $5 million, I will allow that money to be stolen from me because I do not want the impact, the potential impact from the public knowing about it. That happens all the time, right? Same thing with companies. So what is it as a bad guy you're trying to do to the good guys to show impact, right? Intellectual property, kind of for us, where's it at, right? It's at the clear defense contractors. It takes a lot of money to build a new joint strike fighter, right? It costs a couple dollars, right? So the Chinese, as we all know, why would they do it themselves? They steal it, right? So that's our IP, right? It does apply to the DoD. That's a big deal, right? Trade secrets, big deal. For us, we deal with health a lot, so PHI, PII, the health information. This happens all the time. We've got links on here. We'll pass these slides out later. We'll check some of these links out because you say, well, what are you going to do with PHI? Well, I mean, that's a little talk by itself. You can do a lot of stuff with PHI. Mergers, acquisitions, does that happen a lot? It happens a lot for contracting, right? So if you got hackers doing corporate espionage and you're hacking somebody else's SRC, you can affect mergers and acquisitions pretty easily.
If you do it, Gabe, just to that point, a full set of records that allows you to create that allows you to do someone's documents to get health insurance goes for $1,000.
Yep.
You give me enough documents to counterfeit your health insurance card so I can get free insurance, $1,000 each. So,
yeah, it's good money.
Compared to credit cards, which are what? I mean, you guys know better than I do. That's about 50 cents, a quarter, 10 cents, depending on how fresh it is. But so PHI is kind of a big deal.
Supplemental furlough?
identity.
What's that?
Is it supplemental furlough?
There you go.
Troop movements, that's a big deal, right? That's near and dear to my heart, right? Some other folks, right? That sucks having people know where you're at when you're not supposed to know where they're at. Diplomatic cables, here we're talking about embassies talking to each other. That nonsense that Hillary Clinton did, right? You can bet that happened on the cyber side first. Israeli folks, French folks that like to do lots of naughty things to us. That's public. It's public, right? So gaining elevator privileges like critical system apps, infrastructure, going to demonstrate. So I want to hit on that. We put that on there, right? Because like some people will say, hey, hacky, man, it's all about getting system. I got domain admin. Who cares, right? It doesn't mean anything. Does domain admin mean you own PHI? It doesn't mean anything, right? It's not cool. It means you're a silly hacker, right? If that's your aim is to just get domain admin because you're doing things that you may not need to do. You're doing more than you should do. It's all minimal effort, right? Go with the flow type thing. Be like water. So we only do just enough to get what we're after, right? Our target objective. If that means I can get in regular user context and steal a whole boatload of PHI, that's all I'll do. I'm not going to get domain admin just because of it, right? So we did an assessment a while ago where that was the case. We had regular user access, nothing special, just access to shares like users have, the network, right? It just so happened these folks were in transition and they left a lot of stuff unprotected, so we were able to modify purchase order forms, we were able to modify patients' dosages of their medicine. I mean, you name it, we stole a lot of stuff. The point is, like, you only do as much as you need to do. You're not trying to do things to get caught. There is a point here. I'm not just rambling on, I think. Do we have a point?
Yes.
We went through that yesterday. We rambled on for like 4 hours at work till like 7. We're like, is there a point here? I forget. Yes, the point is. I'm just being silly. I got a silly sense of humor. Go ahead, Dr. Phil.
So, you approach an organization, the reason why we spend so much time doing those, and the reason why we spend so much time doing passive reconnaissance is to find out who the organization is, how they make money, who their key personnel are, what their critical processes are, and how we can attack, right? Because that's what a bad guy's going to do. When they red team you, they want that critical hit, they want that death blow, they want to get that business out of the way, right? So there's, I don't know this, but I tend to believe there's boutique organizations out there that do nothing but borderline business intelligence and corporate espionage specifically for that purpose, right? Like how many remember the first Wall Street? Dressed up as a janitor, went in, got all the documents about mergers and acquisitions, went back to Gordon Gekko, made trade, made bukus of money, right? So like, what does that critical information get me, right? How can I manipulate things behind the scenes, right? So if I'm company A, I compete against company B, I have a vested interest in knowing what makes company B tick and how they make money because I want to be better than them, right? So that's how we look at our targets, right? That's our objective. Not to get domain admin, right? But to get just enough to hurt the organization and then come around back with CNDSP and show them how to patch some stuff, right? So it's not about, like Gabe said, it's not about just cool hacker stuff, which was disappointing when you joined the team.
Right. Somebody said today, this is genius, I don't want to do this. I was like, yo, it's not all hacker stuff, right? It's not swordfish. Hacking is very intense. It sucks. It's a lot.
Which I watched last night just to drive home this point. But.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you might have to cut us off. I hope we don't go late. We did yesterday.
I'll keep moving forward.
So here's our methodology, right? Just real quick. I'm going to ask Todd to see. That's a really weird. That's purple. Recording. So pre-planning. So what we're focusing on again here is this passive recon, right? We're going to talk a little bit about active recon. Then you go to test plan, test execution. That's when you're actually doing stuff. And of course, you do the reporting. That gets kind of blown over a lot, right? In some talks I've seen. If you don't write good reports, if your reporting sucks, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. If it doesn't say in the report what you did and how you did it, and it doesn't reflect how much severity there is to it, again, like we said with us, we try to tell a story. You're just Joe Schmo at home. You can do the following things and do the same things we did. That's a story that we try to present, right? So we're focusing again on passive recon and how that fits into our methodology. So there that is. And like I said, we kind of maybe we'll do some talks. If they invite us back, they probably won't. want to talk about some of these other things.
So just one other thing on that, if you don't write a good report, your boss does not care, neither does the company doesn't get better. So if your report stinks, you're not adding any value. You may be the smartest guy in the world, but if you can't write and explain and talk to folks that are technical and C-level executives and HR, then you lose. So writing is the hardest part. It's the most frustrating, and it's the hardest, but it's the most worthwhile.
And talking and explaining.
Yes.
In the military, I came from a military background. State War is really jacked up. If you guys have been in the military, it's not like it's really weird. For the military, but yeah, you got to be able to translate to folks that understand combat, that kind of stuff, because those are the folks that are leaders, right?
So the whole talk, the rest of the talk will be there. Pass it down.
Passive reading, very beginning. Here we go. Keep reminding me. Go to work. Get off track. Here we go. Focus on test objectives. We talked about this, right? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? It's not just hacking for funsies. Let's see how we can do cool stuff. It's what can we get that will hurt this organization if we chose to do so. Or really when we say owning, right, what does that mean? Does it mean you got root on a box? Does it mean you own something? To own something, you have to have file upload and command execution, right? That's a technical thing of saying you own a box, right? But when we say having enough power to do something, we don't really want to do it, but we want to have enough control to where we can affect an organization. That's when you own an organization, where you can affect things, where you can change supply routes, change money. That's when you own it. So we're looking to get PHI, future earnings, fines, faith in customers is huge. Lives and credits are important, and that does relate. There was an incident where somebody happened to shut down a 3D printing machine. Can I talk about that? And something bad happened, right, at a hospital, and a doctor had to postpone a surgery, right? It's a pretty serious deal. That can't happen. The medical system, the medical field is completely jacked up. The applications and the hardware and stuff they build, there is no review of that stuff almost. Let's get this thing out the door, make it work. It's completely insecure.
Most folks are.
What is that?
Most are.
Well, yeah. It's probably made in China. So our objective is to gather, organize, and analyze data in order to create actionable intelligence. There it is again. Footstop that. There'll be a test later. Process support, target identification, exploitation, post-exploitation activities. Focus on our objective. It's really easy to get distracted. So it looks like these are going backwards, and they are, because we're going to go back and then work our way forward. So ultimately we decided this organization, we're going to do a phishing attack, right? A spear phishing attack. That's what everybody does, right? It's the new remote exploit. There hasn't been a remote exploit, right, since 08, 67, right? Maybe there's something else. But that's it, right? Somebody do something for me so I can shell. Thank you. So that's what we're planning on doing. So let's work backwards, right? What tools are we going to use? Our brain, and then at one point we're going to use a keyboard. So we're going to start back here. Tools, right? See how these tools come in manual labor. You'll see that when we talk about tools, the tool does one specific thing for you, but the tool's not going to tell you what to do with that information it gives you, right? That's where your brain comes in. It's just like doing C&D, right? I get information back, here's this net flow data, cool, now what? Right, now you have to apply some thinking on that to tell you what it actually does, PCAP, whatever, right? What's going on here? The tool only does one function, right? So we're gonna talk about how we get here, this is what we want to do, and then how we get to that process. We're gonna work backwards. Starting with tools, we get that raw data from the tools. That's where our brains come in and say, what do I do with this raw data? And then out of that raw data, hopefully, we'll get actionable intelligence that allows us to build a good fish that's successful. So working backwards, are you up? Working backwards, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Phil Hartleib. Thank you.
All right. So as Gabe just mentioned, this kind of took a while. A lot of the courses I took, it's all about the tools. And most of the time when they talk about OSINT, whenever you do a capture the flag event or an exercise or a practical application, the OSINT's forgotten. They're like, you did OA. They get you right to the other stuff, right? So we have our attack vector. We need to use our brains to think about what sort of actionable intelligence products are going to provide us with what we need in that attack vector. What raw data can be used to generate the product, and then at the very end, what tool can we use to get the data? So it's kind of an afterthought. So we're trying to put our brains first and tools second. So before you can really start to sink your teeth into an organization, you want to establish kind of a baseline of raw information, just raw data that you can begin to pull from. And so we're going to use multiple categories of resources and tools to start to fill in these buckets, right? So again, this goes back to, you have your target, you want to find out who they are, what they do, what they sell, what services they provide, key leadership, partners, customers, how do they make money, right? How do they make money and where might their critical resources be? If you don't know that stuff, it's really hard to get a handle on the organization you're attacking, right? So what you want to do is basically go out and begin to gather what those things are, right? And so you talk to people, you talk to folks, you go on assessments, you would be amazed at how many people don't really understand how the company makes money, don't really know where the critical resources are, has non-existent configuration management, right? So this may be an afterthought from a hacker perspective, but in my opinion, the OSINT is kind of the most important. So when you come in and deliver value to that organization, a lot of the time you're going to be helping to identify where those critical resources are. And then if you're in the C&D side of the house, you're going to be talking about what sort of security controls you're going to put in place, right? Defense in depth. This is where you take what we do, get together with CNDSP, and then go and address the organization together jointly as well. So this is kind of what we want to begin to think about. I also want to stress it's passive recon. This was incredibly frustrating when I first started doing this. So passive, we do not want to send a single packet to our target. We don't want to communicate with them. We don't want to touch their resources. We don't want to touch them. Right? This is all about what we can gather without giving them any indication whatsoever that we're interacting with them, that we're even interested. Can you visit their website?
Nope.
That's going to come up later. Initially, the answer is no. And I'll get into that in a minute. So some of the resources up there have an asterisk, and I learned this the hard way. Most tools are not passive. Even if they appear to be passive, they're not. So it's always better to test before you start shooting across the bow, right? So I discovered this with Fierce. Fierce is a super awesome domain scanner. One of the first things it does is it identifies the target, the DNS for the organization, and immediately tries to do a domain transfer. And if it fails, then it goes on and starts to do other things. But you're going to throw a flag by trying to immediately do a domain transfer, and then brute forcing forward lookups against the organization. So coming out that part of the code becomes a great tool again, becomes a passive tool again. Instead of directing it at the target, direct it at Google, get all the information you want. Put in time limits, right? So check your tools. Focus the same way. We'll talk about that in a second, but it will harvest every conceivable document from the domain. It'll download every conceivable document from the domain with no delays in sequential order, right? That's going to show up. So we're stressing what we can get and what we can find without talking to our target at all. What are you grinning at?
The Brooklyn came out.
Order. Sorry. I'm from New York. Been down here a long time. If I get excited or angry, it comes out, so just bear with me. I don't have a speech impediment. Well,
Would you like some good coffee?
that's right. Walking dog. You're up. Next.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah, so this is, before we go to Gabe's section here, you'll notice that a lot of this is network-based, hands-on keyboard, right? Using resources online. One of the more important things is what you can do in the physical world, which tends to go, which kind of gets overlooked. So this goes back to the full scope red team engagement, right? You're going to use all your resources, not just what you find online. So Gabe done this for most of his career, so this is his show. Next slide. There you go.
Okay, yeah, so we didn't mention it just because if you look at any other OSINT document out there, nobody talks about physical. It's like, we can't do physical. We can do a massive OSINT. Everybody thinks of internets, right?
Well, that's silly. Yes, you can. You can definitely do physical. We call it human engineering instead of
social, because social means a lot of people, right? When you come down to it, it's really like you interacting with a human being and understanding the psychology of that interaction and how to manipulate people. So that's what we call it. Yeah, absolutely, you can do passive reconnaissance physically, right? So a couple recon routes. So how do I do passive recon for this assessment we're doing? And how do I establish baseline? So here's the good recon routes, right? Smoking area is huge, right? How many people smoke? Lots of people. Yeah, you do. You suck. Smoking's huge, right? I mean, if you don't smoke, learn how to fake it, get one of those electronic ones or something. Smoking area is huge. It's the best place in the world to follow somebody in, right? Hey, buddy, we're smoking. Somehow it's like this thing. If you both smoke, it's like we're connected somehow. It's this alternate universe, right? So automatically like chums or whatever. So I can tell you some of the places I've physically been able to get to, really high security, you know, turnstiles with guys with M16s and all those nonsense, right? Just walking with the smoking dudes on the side gate because they left the gate open, smoke, let's go in, and there was a door right by the cafeteria. A lot of good stories of that one, but the cafeteria, there's a gate to get over there, walk over there, have a few cigarettes, follow him. Of course, we make fake badges.
Which leads me to the gym, right? So you sit in the parking lot. That's passive, right? We're just sitting in the parking lot looking at stuff.
Looking at people coming and going. You see what's happening. What's the vibe? How does that office kind of work, right? How does that target work? When do they go to lunch? Where do they go to lunch? It's kind of leads into local eateries. That's a great place to hang out.
Dress. What do they look like?
What's that?
How people dress.
That's the thing. That's it.
So one of the assessments we're on, we were talking with folks after the fact. If you look like a doctor, you will get stopped in a heartbeat if you're in the IT area. If you are wearing a polo, some khaki pants, sneakers, and a badge, no questions asked. Hey, look at you, just right through. But spend 10 years in school, no, I'm sorry, you are not getting into the training room.
That goes back to the human engineering thing, right? We're so susceptible to appearances, the way people act or do things, right? And just manipulating that can be a simple thing, just like Phil said, wearing a certain style of clothing. So local eatery, how many people have been out eating? I'm sure nobody in here has done it, but have seen other people doing it, where they're just talking about things they shouldn't be talking about. Ever happen? Yeah. And especially really bad stuff, right? Like, you definitely shouldn't be talking about that.
What you do, and that happens a lot in after-hour spots, right? When you go to dig right down the road in Madra.
Anybody, right? You guys have heard of those.
So you go out, have a few drinks, a couple things about that, right? From the human engineering perspective. If you're going out to drink with somebody after work, you're typically more chummy, right? You're not just, hey, I'm here to work, how are you? And go home at the end of the day. You know this person, you want to spend more time with them for some reason than your family, so you're going to go out and hang out. And, you know, what happens? You might have a few imbibements, right? The tongue gets a little bit looser, and you start talking about even more stuff, right? So a good place just to hang out, man. That's a great time to do physical assessment. Just hang out, have a few drinks at a bar, and you get paid for it, right? Good time. Next. So what do you need, right? I kind of put that in singles, right? What do you need? Because, I mean, yeah, you can look this up and you'll find just all this gunk. You can get all the cool spy stuff in the world, right? It's a big market, right? Some of that kind of stuff. Camera, duh, you need a camera. You gotta capture stuff just like you gotta take a screenshot, right? If you own a box. But camera, there's a lot. I could go out about cameras for a while. But just a little bit about cameras, you gotta make sure that you can silence them. Anybody ever take selfies or whatever, pictures? That's the big thing, is to take selfies, right? Like you're trying to get a secret in the bathroom or whatever, and you don't turn the little thing off. So, I mean, think about this stuff. And it's happened, right? You have to take a flash off, you're trying to take a surreptitious photo. Like one of the old school things we used to do is get the slim cameras before these smartphones and whatnot. You can cut out those little green monsters. You know, talk about green monsters, old military books. Just cut it out, old school style, a little finger hole there to press, a little hole in front, you're walking like this. Right? You turn the flash, do the flash on or the sound. Oh, man. That's dumb. Not to say I haven't done it, I've heard people do that. Monocular, right? Why not a binocular? Because those are cooler. I've seen it on TV. Well, if you want a binocular, if you're going to do something like that, because you want to have at least one eye peripheral, right? Just like if you're shooting a rifle, does that make, probably doesn't make sense, but if you're shooting a rifle, you don't just aim it like this and squint your eye, because then you basically do anything else. You got to learn to do it with both eyes open, so you can see your peripheral, right? So, I'm going to go to the next. So, proper bag. You got to have something to put it in and out. You don't just want to have pockets, right? You got to have some kind of bag that works. We'll talk about next. Space pen's obvious, right? Why do I say space pen? It's typically more reliable, right? It's pressurized. You can write anywhere, wet, dry. And waterproof notebook, of course, again, elements if you're taking notes and stuff. So optional street attire. Oops, sorry. Oh, I'll talk about it here. It's fine. Good choice. So what you need again, camera, hand, right? For the coding people out here. Be natural, use cover, concealment, right? This, again, this stuff is entire class by itself, just talking about physical stuff. So I just want to cover a couple things. Don't be out there, you know, trying to take pictures like this, and like being goofy, like you're a Japanese tourist or something. Trying to be a little bit conspicuous, but you don't want to be the ninja at the same time. You know, so you got to kind of mix it up. You got to play with that, learn how to do it naturally, and that's definitely passive, right? Your scope of organization, just taking pictures, give you a ton of info. So the same thing with the binoculars. See the camera slide, consider your surroundings when you're doing stuff. Again, don't be sitting out here like this. But so where would you use binocular, you asked? Somebody asked that, I heard. You're going to use that, right? So like if you're you're outside and you can see through a window, you're across the street, you can see across, you know, a street to another building, to a window, or whatever. You want to have some kind of thing that's going to give you that ability to see distance in case you get good at reading lips and you get good at seeing what people type on a keyboard. If you're able to watch, you can see keyboards, you can see people type and guess passwords. Right, so that's why you have to know. Proper bag, I'm biased, and I said it's really important, not just because I'm biased, I'm a little bit of a bag fanatic. If you want to have a bag, it's easy to access your gear and get in and out. Again, if you're doing a passive, you don't want to look suspicious, right? So the space pen, that's a no-brainer. I already talked about that. So I say here, learn sniper and infantry techniques, right? So infantry techniques, one technique that we talk about is interlocking fields of fire, right? So you want to be able to fire and cover all your area, right? So you can kill everybody. So you think about that with cameras too, right? Camera positions, they follow the same principle. So that's something you want to be cognizant of. And when you're using your notebook, you're just sitting there taking notes, like you're writing stuff in your diary, journal, right? And you're actually drawing pictures of your target organization, where the cameras are, exits, entrances, that kind of thing, right? And the sniper techniques are, there's ways to learn how to memorize something quickly. So you don't sit here and walk by somewhere and go, right? You gotta be able to do this, where you just walk by, real natural, and glance and be able to tell later, and then go back on the corner in a safe zone, write down what you saw. There's ways to do that. Maybe just Google sniper techniques of memorization. You'll get that, right? Something like that. Street smart attire. This works for men too. One of the things on the Army grade team they asked you in your interview is, would you be willing to act like you were interested in the same sex if you needed to elicit information, right? The CI technique, of course, and that kind of thing. So you may be asked to do that. You may be asked to dress up, wear a uniform. We had people that wore officers' uniforms. Of course, you want to be an officer, to go into meetings and stuff like that. But for women, it's really handy to elicit information. Again, we're talking about passive, right? So we're not, if you're doing active engineering, what's the difference? If you're doing active human engineering, you have a plan. You have specific information you're trying to get, and you write that out kind of like you do pseudocode of what you want to get and information you want to elicit from that person. So it's an act, right? It's a script. That's active human engineering. Passively, you know, men are interested in certain things about women physically. So if you dress that way, typically you'll get more information from people. Is that the least offensive way I could say it? But it's a good point. It sounds silly, right? But we actually do that. We had females on our team that would, you know, oblige and do that typical thing. And the things that men are interested in can make them talk about a lot of things they should talk about.
It counts on the phone too. So this year's DEF CON 21 CTF winner, first time, woman, totally killed the competition.
Played that card like
Closest competitor was 200 points away from her. Just
she doesn't even do hacking stuff. She
no, it's not. She doesn't even do it for a living. So she does business. She does competitive business intelligence. I'll try.
So that's a little bit we're going to talk about physical, passive reconnaissance and how it relates back to being able to obtain information that will help you perform a successful attack, retargetation. That's that. Next.
All right. So we talked about picking a target, establishing a baseline of information. Don't ignore the physical components, right? It's incredibly important. So previously there was a question whether or not to visit the website, right? So when I first started doing this stuff, taking interest in organization, practicing for fun, go to the website, get out a tool like Attack Proxy or HP Rack, spider the whole site, pull it all down, right? Get a nice little archive, grab through, look for interesting stuff. Should throw flags, right? If somebody's recursively pulling down every single piece of information from your site. So I was doing research for this talk, came across a super interesting tool called Warwick. It's not about the tools, right? But anyway. So how do I passively collect resources from a particular website? So there's a group at Old Dominion University that put this together. And they got the idea, and it's actually listed on archive.org, the Wayback Machine. Anyone ever been there? So archive.org kept getting requests, hey, I lost my website, I didn't back it up. Can you give me my stuff? Do you have my stuff to archive? Can I get it back because I want to rebuild it? Of course, no, we don't have that. So these folks went out and built a tool. And apparently there's more than one archive on the internet. I didn't know this. There's like dozens of these things where people archive information so you can go back in time and look at what a web page looked like 10 years ago. So what the tool will do is you give it a target. Say it's, I think I picked this organization. So your organization, this organization. ISSA. What are you doing? So what it does is it will it basically goes out and recursively asks each of these individual archives, hey, do you have this resource? Do you have this resource? Do you have this resource? And it'll find who has it, who has the most recent copy, and it pulls it down and puts it on your local machine. So after 8 hours, 12 hours a day, you're slowly accumulating the most recent information from your target in a nice little folder on your local machine that you can go through at your leisure if you haven't sent a single packet to your target. Really great way to bring back, I would say mirror, it's an approximate mirror of the website because it's not going to be 100% up to date. But if you're trying to establish a baseline for what the organization is and what it does and what services it provides, this is a super interesting way to do it. So the next slide actually shows you a picture of the end. So this is a printout of the log where it will give you the resource, where it found it, where it put it on your local system. So again, the reason why we're doing all this nonsense is we need actionable intelligence, right? So what are the intelligence products that this is going to support, right? If you have access to the website and all that data, you're going to know descriptions of the services, descriptions of the products, maybe a little bit about corporate culture, the technologies they use, financial outlook, if you're finding quarterly reports. You can also get an idea of what their customers are like. Right? So maybe there's feedback from the customers online. So you're beginning to assemble this pedigree for the organization you're going after. Next one that's super helpful. What you want to do is find out not only who your target organization is, but who they partner with, right? Who are their customers. So some of the assessments we've been on, right? Everything in the military is about joint, reducing waste. Everyone come under the same umbrella, right? The fact of the matter is you may be this joint program if you still identify with the organization you used to work for, because it still exists. It's just under this larger umbrella, right? So if you go and try to find intel on an individual, and you assume that they're identifying with this joint program, and you find zilch, and you go, maybe they still think they work for these other folks, and lo and behold, all of the juicy stuff is still associated with that smaller organization that gets swept up underneath, right? So it's always important to find out who they partnered with, who their components are, right? Who their suppliers might be. And so one way to do that is using just some of the advanced Google operators. Google is absolutely amazing. What I found that most of the other search engines support these. I know a lot of you guys probably already know this, but there's a sample there where you can actually begin to bring back data about who their partners might be. Right, so Cisco bought LinkSys, right? Most of us in this room already know this, but if you didn't, one way to bubble up the fact that LinkSys is partnered with Cisco or part of Cisco would be to run a search like this, right? So again, we're just using our brains, what we know, what we want to find in the search engine to bring back this data. Now there's automated ways to do this, to bring back some of these intelligence products like key partnerships and customers. One of those tools is Maltego, which is absolutely incredible. Gabe's used it quite a bit, so I'm really going to take this slide.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too deep on this one, hopefully, because this is like 16 classes by itself. Years ago, when we were doing this, right, this just came out. It was called TAS servers you had to make yourself. Remember that? They're called TAS servers. You bring on transforms. Transforms were really loose out there. You had to run all your own. It was nuts. Get your own APIs. It was crazy, right? But now, I mean, it's a service. We pay $650 a year. It's $350 to renew, right? It's free in Kali, so get your Kali links. If you never played Maltego, get your Kali on, right? Fire this puppy up. You're limited in results, but you can still do a ton of good stuff. Just like with Nessus or the Metasploit Community Edition, right? It has limits, but still you can do a lot of cool stuff. So get it out and play with it. I suggest just going to a site. First thing you want to do is just run a machine
and see what that gets you. You haven't used it, you may use it. But one of the big things I want to talk about with this is you're going to get a lot of info, right? Doing passive recon. We spent about a month and a half just doing OSINT, right? You come with a lot of data, tons and tons of data, right? It's hard to make sense of all that, right? This isn't something like big data where you can just, run it through some scripts and do some things, right? You have to go through it all.
Other teams don't have a month to do.
What's that?
If you're the type of team that doesn't have a month,
Oh yeah, you may not have a lot of time, right? You may have just have a couple weeks to do an assessment.
we have a luxury. You almost spend as much
Luxury. So yeah, this is just a great way to visualize all your information. So, like I said, I could go on about it forever. I want to mention it though to make sure if anybody has not heard it, please go to your colleague.
So the transform there is just an automated way to do exactly what that previous Google search did. So you find out all the sites that have links pointing into your target. So you can sort through and find out who students. Again, the presentation is not comprehensive. We just want to give you a flavor of what we do to bring in that baseline set there. So one of my favorite things to look at is documents and metadata. I had no idea how much information you can pull out of a document that has nothing to do with the content of the document itself. So documents that you find about an organization are super interesting just for the information that's in them, but there's a lot of metadata that's left behind in the document itself. So from the document, if you look at the metadata, you can begin to extract things like usernames, emails. We found internal IP address spaces. We found paths to where the document's saved on a local computer, operating system, software, major minor version numbers, all of which is super useful when you're trying to develop the attack vector in your mind, right? So if I know you're running a particular piece of software on a particular operating system, and I know the major and minor version numbers, it's going to be super easy for me to come up with a targeted attack, right? As opposed to just guessing and shooting blind, right? So that's why the OSINT is so important, because it saves you time. And to Gabe's point before, we're only going to do just enough to get us what we need. We're not going to go above the threshold. So one way to get those documents is through some advanced Google searches. But again, we're talking passive, right? So we don't want to pull the document from the target site. So with a couple of advanced Google searches, if you find a document you're interested in and it's present on the target domain, you can simply remove the site from your search results, and you'll find copies of the very same document on another site that you can pull from without actually raising any flags, without even having to interact with the target. So super helpful.
Phil, the ones where they have like cache copy links next to those results, are those saved passively?
So Google Cache is another great place.
Okay.
Yes.
So that doesn't actually reach out or notify the target that
My understanding is that Google Cache is Google Cache and it's not going to touch your target.
Okay, cool.
I mean, that's the way I understood it. I
Oh,
hope I'm right.
So it says.
Be careful though, because it doesn't necessarily cache everything. So it may cache the link or cache the page, but it may not have that to the target.
So yeah, so when you bring it up, it may actually reach out to the target
Right,
site
so just
once you
That
post
thing
it.
on the right-hand part of the
Yeah.
screen is the cache, but if you click on something,
Yeah.
I think all bets
It's
are
best
off.
to look somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't want to do kind of a surgical strike with the search engine, there are a ton of archives online. SpyLogic website has a great collection of these archives. So you could go to DocStock, SlideShare, put in your target organization, put in your target human being you're interested in, see what documents they've collected. And these archives maintain them on their own server, so you're not going to touch the target. However, one thing I did find doing research for the talk is that docs-archive not necessarily the same. So if you could read this, we don't host or save this document on our server. We just preview this file from the source. So by viewing it, you're touching your source. You're no longer passive. So, and this was, I don't know why I scrolled down, but I'm just like, oh, that's weird. So just make sure you look at the fine print, I guess, so to speak. Next. Okay, so again, bringing in the baseline set of information, how do we efficiently and effectively get all this metadata out of the document? So we do it manually, of course. FOCA is an absolutely awesome tool. It's built to harvest metadata out of documents. So we did it passively. We pulled all these documents down to our local box. FOCA will do that automatically, as I said at the beginning of the talk, and it will hit your targets and pull down everything. You can also drag and drop the documents right into FOCA. Okay, so you don't have to use FOCA's automated get, I guess, so to speak. You just drop the documents in, tell it to extract all the metadata, analyze the metadata, and you can see on the left-hand side, it starts to print out collections of software, parameters, folders, users, passwords, email, you name it. All of which is tied to your target organization. Just a treasure trove of information. So if you want to start to build up a list of users, you'll get names, you'll get full names, you'll get usernames, right? So know the format of the username for an organization, great intelligence product, right? Especially if you're going to be brute forcing something later on. If you're going to be sending an email later on. Email format is super useful, right? Is it last, first, middle initial? Is it first dot last? Is it first dot middle dot last, right? So how do I save myself from sending a bunch of email to addresses that don't exist? I can get that from passive recon. Super helpful.
Quick shameless plug on FOCA. If you haven't heard it before, Evil FOCA was just released last DEFCON. That's more in the active side of things, but just want to pull that down and play with that in your lab, because that's a whole ton of fun and mess with people wherever we're working.
Yeah, that's what I use it for, but it does a whole lot of other stuff, but that's specifically what we use it for. Also, before we leave this topic, search diggity. You guys ever use search diggity? Anybody ever heard of Google Dorks, right? Where you can actually use Google to return information about vulnerable web servers.
Yeah.
People have web servers in default configurations, you know, where directory indexing is turned on, right? So
Usually admin pages with no admin password set
yes.
is my favorite.
Default login pages,
Yep.
right? So what search diggity does is it basically takes the Google hacking database, which was developed by Johnny Long, super smart dude, does a lot of charity work in Africa these days, Hackers for Charity, awesome organization, you should give them lots of money. They automate those Google Docs, right? So, and it's highly specific, right? So put in your target domain, pick what you're interested in. It could be files with usernames, files with email, files with passwords. You name it, check it off, it'll go out and use Google to bring back that data. Google gets super pissed, and it will detect this as bot traffic. It will also detect, I had a friend that tried to use a bunch of public proxies. The tool does accept hundreds of proxies, and it will try to route your traffic through them to stop you from getting detected by Google, which violates the terms of service. I do not recommend doing it, but if you go and get a Google API key and you create a Google custom search engine, you get that ID, you put these 2 pieces of data into this guy, and it will give you 100 queries per day, and then $5 for 1,000. So it's definitely worth the money. It also does data loss prevention type of stuff. So if you dump a couple dozen documents in there, and you want to know if any of them have patient data, credit card numbers, social security numbers, it's got regex to detect it. And it'll screen through those documents and say, hey, there's social security numbers in this document. So it's super useful. Next. All right, so again, bringing in the intel, right? So we talked about how to generate emails, all these things go into our big pot of raw data. Anything in yellow is what we can create from the raw data. One thing we haven't talked about is the network footprint, right? We've talked about looking at the website, looking at the company, how do they make money, who their users are, who their key leadership is, what's their network footprint, right? So one of my favorite tools in the world is Fierce. It's written by Varshney, Robert Hansen is his name. He wrote it in Perl. This is the one I talked about that will immediately try to do a domain transfer against your target. It's really easy to comment out this piece of the code, right? And then what it does after that is he put together a word list based on all his years of experience of doing this kind of stuff. The word list is candidate host names. So in all his years, he knows, he's pretty sure if you go into an organization, there's going to be something with a host name SA. There's going to be a host name, something with NS or NS1 or NS2, right? And so what it does is, so give it Google's DNS, right? Because we're being passive, 8.8.8.8. It says, hey, do you have the IP for this fully qualified domain name? Sure I do, great. Puts it in an output file, goes to the next in the brute force list. Do you have this? Do you have this? Now the great thing about the tool, if it gets a hit, if you get a successful forward lookup, if you give it the wide option, it'll go and do reverse lookups on everything in that class C, right? And so it's a super smart tool because what it does is it finds assets that exist in non-contiguous IP space, right? So maybe you have an organization that has crap all over the place. There's no way you know about it unless you use something like this, right? It's just going through, just iteratively through the IP space serially is not going to find it, but this does. And so maybe you find something way over there, and all of a sudden there's a bunch more assets you've missed in the past. So it's a super interesting tool. It quickly gives you lots of candidate host names. Now, okay, so we get back thousands of hosts. This is great. What's the intelligence product we're going to create? So what we immediately do is we start categorizing our servers according to their name. So if there's DB in the name, I'm pretty sure it's a database. If there's app in the name, I'm pretty sure it's an enterprise application. NS, SMTP, and you can start to categorize them. So when you get inside, instead of having to guess, you already know the resources you'd like to go after, right? So this is the intel we've already gathered passively, not touching our target. They don't even know we're doing it, right? So that's kind of the power of that tool. Next. Rod text, also super awesome. Gabe turned me on to this. It's basically does an incredible amount of work for you. So like, basically you can give it your target domain, and it will display everything that's learned about that particular domain. So it's going to do all the hard work of going out and talking to Google, talking to all those individual name servers, and displaying that data for you here. And through a simple for loop, you can scrape everything that happens to know for your target organization. And again, the intelligence products we're after are taking all the stuff from raw text, all the A records, and putting them in nice buckets so we know who we're going to go after in the future. Next. Okay. So I think this is right before we get into our case study, right?
Yes.
Okay. Last thing. So again, we're gathering that nice, thick baseline set of intelligence products that we can work from. One thing that's super helpful, especially if you're going to develop online personas, right? If you're going to develop LinkedIn accounts or Facebook accounts specifically for the purpose of getting closer to your targets, which does violate the terms of service, so I'm not recommending you do it. But if you decide to do it, you'll be really happy with the results. But to get started there, you kind of need seed accounts, right? So how can I quickly find a couple of dozen people that work at this organization that I can begin to cozy up to, right? So there's a great talk by Chris Gates and Lewis at DerbyCon where he talks about how to create a LinkedIn account. One of the first things he does is connect with recruiters. There's not a recruiter out there who won't connect with you, right? They love connections. So when you actually go to connect with some of these folks you find in your seed accounts, you've got 15, 20 connections, you don't look suspicious, people have obviously connected with you, right? To Gabe's point before, if you happen to be an attractive woman in the IT field, you're going to get connected with, right? Same thing with Facebook. There's another great talk out there about a guy who spent months seeing how far he could get by cozying up to the people on LinkedIn that list themselves on, I have TSSCI clearance. There's a LinkedIn group for this, right? Hey, I'm on the, he joins the group. It's a joke what you need to do to get verified to get on there. And then he identifies his targets. He owns a company called The Art of Charm. His name's Jordan Harbinger. Super smart, awesome presentation in 2012 DerbyCon. Anyway, he creates Facebook profiles. And his company specializes in teaching men, he only takes men clients, literally the art of charm. Whether it's dating, whether or not you work for a government whose best interest it is to have you get really good at being James Bond type, right? Anyway, so the point is, he hires matchmakers. He has people who specialize in creating a Facebook profile that's going to get close to your target, right? Super interesting stuff. Again, a whole other talk by itself, but how to get started. So, potato.com, anyone ever heard of this? It's a great site. We wrote a Perl script, kind of a short Perl script. You give it a target organization, and it will go and scrape all the individuals that happen to work for the organization and give you a nice common delimited file with their name, their role in the organization. You can then take this list, go over to LinkedIn, go over to Facebook, and start to build out your personas, right? And what we'll see in the case study is that it's super important because that's how you kind of bootstrap your way up to building out LinkedIn contacts that allow you to really start to see the organizational structure for your target, right? So the more people you connect with on LinkedIn, I got all these SAs I'm friends with, I got all these DB admins I'm friends with, I have all these middle managers who love talking to me, right? All friends with them, right? You start to break out and see what groups of people actually work there. It's amazing. Okay, next slide.
Did you GitHub this?
This will be on GitHub Monday. I just have to make a few other changes.
Email if you want.
Yes. Okay. So the next few slides are going to walk. So we've done all this work, right? It's literally grunt work. So it's not sexy. It's not like you see in Swordfish. It's literally manually grinding through all of this OSINT to put together reasonable intelligence products so you can get to this point, right? So we have online personas, and literally what I would do what my friend would do every morning, he would come in, go to his LinkedIn account, see who's accepted his connections, right? Most of the time, those individuals don't hide their connections. So I immediately go to their connections and start going through to look at who I might want to connect. Ooh, a help desk person, connect, right? HR, connect. Director of Education, connect. Director of Training, connect. Right? Each morning, I find new connections, go through their contact, ask for new connections, and recursively build out my profile. Right? This person's been doing this over a year. They're almost up to 200 contacts. There's lots of great tools you can use to take these LinkedIn contacts and start to visualize who you're connected with. So show me everyone at Benchmade Knives that works in manufacturing. I have it, right? So you want to recursively harvest and catalog these folks, right? So at the end of the day, slowly but surely, I'm building out, show me all the C-level executives for that organization, right? Database admins, SharePoint admins, help desk system admins. Show me all the people with access to patient data, nurses, doctors, analysts, researchers, right? That's the power. I mean, it's literally grunt work. You're going to sit there and you're going to spend more time with your made-up accounts than you do on your own account. This person gets endorsed. I get endorsements every day. Fuck yeah, I know about firewalls. He knows about systems. I don't even exist. I'm getting endorsements. It's amazing. It's great. It's unbelievable.
I mean, personal
if you ever wondered whether or not LinkedIn is useless, this should tell you. I'm serious. The guy gets more endorsements than real people. It's amazing. So anyway, super fun, kind of creepy. Anyway, next slide. So all this hard work, why are we doing it? What's the point? So drudgery, coming in, making new connections, going to their profile. Do they have anything interesting? Who are they connected with? Do I want to connect with them? Is there anything interesting there? Sooner or later, if you look in the About section for a lot of these LinkedIn folks, they list a Gmail account or a Yahoo account. Every once in a while, you get a work account. They put their work email in there, which is a total bonus, because now I no longer have to guess what the format is. Now I know. It's your last name, first initial, middle initial at x.y.z. Bonus. I no longer have to brute force your email account. I know. Any other people I find at the organization, I just have to write a script to put your name in that format, attach it to the domain, I'm done. Next. Also super useful. If you find a target who likes to blather on LinkedIn, there's a good chance that any other account they have, they're probably going to blather there too, right? So one really quick way to find out where else they might exist is, there's lots of tools like this. Name checks one. You put in the username, find out where else they might have an account. So I use my own. Some of these results are right. Some of them are false positives and garbage, but you're going to have to do the manual work of finding it out, right? So you see my Twitter handle is PJ Harvey, just my name, right? Where else do I use that? You can see that here. Right? So then you can go, not only am I going to try and connect with you on LinkedIn, not only will I try to friend you on Facebook, now I'm going to go start following your Twitter stream. Maybe you have a bunch of cool Flickr pictures. Maybe you don't take the metadata out of your pictures. Maybe to find out where you are, right? Really interesting stuff. And you start to build out target packages, to use Gabe's military terminology, right? Individual target packages for people that you want to go after. Okay, next. So, again, just grinding through the data. Every day you come in, check the Facebook accounts, check the LinkedIn accounts. So, we found John D's LinkedIn account. Great. Using NameCheck for Facebook's graph search, which is super creepy, by the way. Have you guys seen some of the demos? Where it says, show me people at this company that like racism. And it literally will show you people that have racism in their likes. There's a bunch of demos online about that. It's crazy. Anyway, find the person's Facebook account. The same way you can recursively harvest LinkedIn contacts, start going through their friends. I was amazed at how many people, their accounts are wide ass open. Totally public. So now I can look at all their individual friends. I don't even have to friend them. I can see their information. I can see their posts without even having to get near them. I find his manager, the guy that's his boss, because of course they're friends outside work. I monitor his account, I monitor John's account. One day I see that after a particularly long week of work, Jerry posts congratulations to his entire team. tags every single person in this routine, all the direct reports. I no longer have to guess who's a Windows admin at this company. I know, and I know they're on Facebook. If I didn't find them on LinkedIn, I now know who they are. At the same time, John posted a link describing an upgrade. Public article, right? It's in the news. Hey, these people are upgrading. I didn't know about this. Go check out the link in the article. It has those middle managers and politicians that love talking about all the hard work they're doing. So now I know the timeline for the activity, the resources involved, the leadership that's responsible for the upgrade, and the team that's going to be doing the upgrade. Just from coming in and grinding through LinkedIn and Facebook data every morning. So we've done all this OSINT, all this drudgery. What does it get us? Right? So now it's time. Now we have what we need for a good fish, right? We're not going to send the Nigeria scam fish. We're not going to send dumb shit, right? So now we know we don't have an email. We don't have to guess. Okay? We know who we're going to send it to because we already know who all the admins are. Plus, we have a ton of good information to put in the body of the message. They even provided a link to the intranet, to their internal internet that provides you FAQs and helpful information about how the upgrade is going to proceed. Right? So you can imagine that all that hard work, all the passive recon, got us intelligence products that we used our brain to get. Now that we have them, we can put together our fish, which gives us our attack vector, which gets us to the next slide. Right? So anyway, this is where we started. We went through all that craziness, and this is where we ended up, right? So we had an idea of what we're going to need, right? Activity timelines, LinkedIn, Facebook, news articles, structure of personnel, all that document data, all the hard work we did on LinkedIn. By the way, you can also just do Google searches for LinkedIn.com. A lot of people's public profile information will give you what you need without even having to think. Same thing for Facebook. Business processes from the website we harvested. Verified email addresses, right? Because people list their work email in their LinkedIn account. The one that's not listed here is mail server, security controls, right? So raw text, fierce. I know where the mail servers are, what the IP addresses are, and I never even asked the target, right? Everything we need to get that spearfish, which is part of a larger attack plan, all through passive recon. Never had to touch that button. I'm sorry, Gabe, this was your slide. All right, next slide. I think next slide too.
No.
No? Oh, so if you guys can't guess, I love OSINT. It's, I have no business being in information security. My background is completely different. It was semiconductor physics and I spent a lot of time reading papers, doing really tedious work, so this is kind of right up my alley, so it just kind of meshes with what I like to do. So anyway, this is, in the time I spent with Gabe's team, these are a couple of things I picked up. Native search functions are going to miss data. So LinkedIn and Facebook graphics, they're wonderful, they're going to miss stuff. The hacker tools are going to miss stuff. I should have put this one third, but the most interesting stuff I've ever come across has just been grueling, grinding, super boring manual work, right? Every once in a while you get that gem and you're like, oh my God, right? It's that eureka moment. You know, it gives me chills just talking about it. Anyway, take ridiculously detailed notes, right? I learned this the hard way. If my notes don't make sense to me 60 days from now when it's time to write the report, I have no way to communicate to the client what they need to do to prevent some of this data from getting out there, right? How did you get their email again? And if you can't tell them, you have no value, right? How did you find out this piece of information? Can't tell you. Take screenshots. Don't underestimate the time using just Google and big and bad search functions. So I heard it in talks and I didn't really get it until I was able to do it myself, but thinking creatively about what sort of advanced searches you might run based on data that's come back to get you what you need. So for example, it finally dawned on me, if we're trying to put together a fish for the medical community, how can I search for forms that I can convince someone to open? Well, I filled out a million of these freaking forms when I go to the doctor. All of them have you ever, so I put that in quotes, boom. Dozens of documents that I can use, right? So just sitting there and staring at it, you're like, oh, that was what I needed, right? Be prepared to change objectives based on newly returned data. You may come across something that is so incredibly enticing that your game plan totally changes. And the notes. Always be working towards an intelligence product. When I first started doing this, I was in the weeds all the time, not really feeling like I was making progress. If I have something in my head, what am I trying to create? What am I after? Why am I doing this? Right? Then you kind of, it really keeps you vectored. You stop from getting, you can stop from getting lost in the weeds. Organize your notes, and the other one I already covered. Oh, these applications are incredible. Xen, Evernote, KeepNote, it allows you to basically create kind of a desktop wiki. Parent pages, child pages, right? It makes it super easy to write the report later on because you can see the timeline of what you did. They're free in column. Next. This is you. Make you drink more. Yeah.
So to go back to this real quick, this whole thing, this case study is real because we changed names of techniques in, but there is a person out there, a good buddy of ours who doesn't exist, that is actively doing these things towards people that we want to target, and certain people that we've targeted and become friends with have actually given us all this information that we would have gotten otherwise, that have led us to a particular type of attack that's been successful and has led to follow-on attacks, all because of our non-existent friend that has been working for the last year to find information. So it's been pretty helpful to do that.
Keep in mind this is all passive. Right? So it violates the terms of service. In most countries, if you deliver a payload using one of these accounts, you will go to jail for a really long time. You're just passively collecting information. Yes, it does violate the terms of service, be aware, but I think they're more interested in driving traffic to their site and getting users than they are about leaving these folks out. So anyway, just a caution for more.
This is just mitigation. It's a lot of naughty stuff, right? Well, how do I protect myself against that? It's the internet. I can't fix it, right? Well, probably not. Am I messing your thing up? I'm sorry.
He looks really angry. He's got this scowl. I thought I was screwing up the whole time. There it is, smiling. Okay.
It takes away 10. So do this stuff yourself. Do this stuff against you. How many people Google their own name? Yeah, exactly. I thought you were going to lie. You didn't lie. Yeah, you have. You've done it. How many people like added stuff to that? Like, Tony Cook is something. It's pretty fun. Or you can play a game with like your buddies, like who is the most something or other, right? And see who's the most hits. It's fun. So do this stuff against yourself. You don't have to be a professional hacker or pen tester, right to you do it right. Speak highly, or get your internets and get your brain out and start doing these things. There's a lot of real simple things you can do to protect your organization you don't think about, right? You know how you make money, right? I mean, a lot of people work for an organization and don't really understand what is important to them, right? You're just doing a job. I do this one thing, and you don't really understand the bigger picture, right? Be cognizant of it. Doesn't mean you have to be the CEO and know all that stuff, everything that goes on. Just be cognizant of what you're doing and how that ripples out, the ramifications of action and things you may do, and how people out there are looking for that. It exists. You always got to be on your toes, right? So how would you plan an attack, right? If you're sitting there, pretend you're a malicious insider for a second, you're saying, you know what, I'm pissed off, these guys are pissing me off, I'm going to throw a fit, and I'm going to get mad and send nasty emails and stuff like that. How would I do some bad things if I wanted to, right? And you may not have consciously thought about it before, but when you do, you probably come up with a lot of things that you think you do. So if you came up with it, someone else is coming up with it too, right? Acceptable use policy, we'll say, oh, you're going to break that. Monitoring social media. Monitoring your social media, right? I mean, there's folks that do that now, right? That, I mean, of course, like if you're training a new employee, they send your resume, right? Hey, hire me, here's my resume, right? What's the first thing you do? Or at least I do, right? You go just Google them, right? You look up their thing, him or her, see what's going on. Sure, you can do that. There's some companies that'll make you give them your Facebook information so you can look.
You know, it's the article of California School District. Now monitors 50,000 Twitter. Okay, so you can imagine there's professional equivalents for that. Like if you're super hyper about it, they will protection. That's what it's pretty. People that you ever see the articles of customers that bitch about customers and blows up, and all of a sudden, like, people are getting fired, and the company's losing money, right, just because of one little, I just had this asshole on the phone today, right, and all of a sudden, it's out, out the gate.
I mean, just like this one guy we talked about in our case study, there's one particular guy that the friend of ours that doesn't exist is pretty good friends with this guy. This one guy is just a gold mine. He loves talking about everything. Everybody in the world apparently needs to know very detailed things about what he's doing.
Checks into work constantly.
Constantly. I'm here at work doing things.
I know where he gets haircuts too.
It's like, come on, man.
I got a great picture of him smoking a hookah, which of course is flavored tobacco, right? Just love me some flavored tobacco.
These guys, we found some really interesting characters. It's funny. It's just funny, like you would go up there one day and see these people. You're the guy with the mirror ball picture. So yeah, be cognizant of what you're doing. You're putting yourself out there, right? Great, do that. Talk about all your personal stuff. Don't sit there and talk about, I'm doing an upgrade next week, and it's going to be from this to this, and it's going to be these people, and these people are involved. You know, it's come on, you know. So just be cognizant of that. But make sure your users are cognizant. So everybody has to check Facebook, right, when you're at work, because I mean, what else are you gonna do, right? So just be cognizant of that when you're telling, when you're allowed to say, hey man, just think about what you're doing. Public affairs, everybody kind of has some effect of that. We use public affairs, it's more of a military-like, so anywhere has a public affairs office or whatever. So if you're an info security person, you should maybe get in contact with these people, right? And you should probably talk to them and discuss some of these issues that are out there. It's not just about getting all the email off the internet. It's about the whole picture of your organization and how that looks to the world. Right? Use free monitoring tools. Google Alerts, Yahoo Pipes is kind of new, so your mileage may vary on that, but it's kind of neat. Mess with Yahoo Pipes if you get a chance. It does some cool stuff. Twitter search, social media apps, Search Diggity. There is paid services. Some of them cost quite a bit of money, but if you're a company that's like a bank or something you work for, I don't know where all you guys work, but if you're at a bank or something, there's considerable money involved. It'd be worth it to look at some of these paid services that will tell you if you've been pounded, basically, right? So all these little text places out there on the internet, right, lists.
Case sites.
They'll tell you if you've got owners, if you've got usernames out there. If you don't have the staff to do it, I mean, and you talk about cost, it's much cheaper than hiring a full-time person. So look at some of those things. Okay, so just again, overall theme is think about how you do a stack, think about what we talked about, how we formulate an attack passively, and think about how when you're just interacting with the intranets on a day-to-day basis, how that's perceived to the outside world. Okay, all right.
Okay, so these are some of the things that we do individually. I do this personally. I do this for my family, my friends, my relatives. LinkedIn security settings. I've come across a few people that keep their connections private. They don't let anybody see them. So when I get the connection and I go to enumerate the contacts, the only thing I see is the people we have in common. Totally sucks. It makes it really hard. But it is a really smart thing to do, because seriously, why would someone need to see my connections? You're trying to connect with me. You're trying to develop a relationship with me. Why do you care when we connect with me? You can care who we have in common. You can't turn it off. That's what you should see, right? Good stuff. Avoid connections with people you never met. Just because you have mutual connections doesn't equal trust. Although that's been the most effective method, right? Is I'm going to connect. When I'm enumerating someone's contacts, it shows me the shared connections. People that are 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 shared connections, pretty good chance they're going to connect, right? Just pivoting based on that trust, right? So don't publish your email information. So some people publish a private email, namecheck.com. It's still going to get the data about you. It's still going to allow me to find out where your digital footprint is. And I'm not saying like turtle shell this thing, right? Like, I'm on Facebook, right? I love publishing pictures of my son. I love my parents to be able to see them. I love Twitter. It's a huge information source for me. You can't just turn off, but I'm saying just be cognizant. Like Gabe said, do it to yourself. Know what you're revealing to the world, right? You guys ever seen those videos of the psychic, right? And it's this big gag because all he's done is looked at all your social media, and then he goes into the room and he tells you that you have problems with your leg, and everyone's like, oh. Meanwhile, you published it on Facebook like a week ago. That's why the guy knows everything. So Facebook don't allow followers. I didn't even know this, but apparently Facebook's gotten wise to the fact that celebrities love to get on social media like Twitter. And so they put in a feature that you can follow someone or allow someone to follow you without having to friend them. So if you're a celebrity and you want to broadcast out to hundreds of thousands of people, you can allow them to follow you but not friend you. Super bad idea if you're not a celebrity, right? Because that means I never have to go near you. I just have to follow you, and then all of your public posts come right to me. Avoid public posts. That's where we got a lot of that data. Everything for a lot of those accounts was just wide open. Never had to go near the target. Probably don't want to check in at your work address. Right? So every time I go to a particular Facebook profile, I get a nice geolocated point for this person checking in at work. I now know you work in this particular job at this particular organization. I know when you arrive. I know when it's probable that you're going to be there. So if I'm sending a fish and I want you to click at a particular time, super useful stuff. I know when you're going to be there. Yeah, I can't believe you put that up there. So have you guys ever seen Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves, right? So that scene where he says at the very end, right, when everything's supposed to be great, and he goes over and someone comes up and he's like, I'd like to give you another interview. And he's like, sure. And then Al Pacino's like, vanity, my favorite sin, right? That is why social media is so useful for an attacker, right? People love talking about themselves. I do it. I'm totally guilty of it, right? But it truly is my favorite sin as someone who's trying to put in data passively about something. Right? People love to put data out there. Forms. This one's been talked about pretty much every course I've ever been to. So Stack Overflow, all these technical forms. What's the Pro Exchange? What's it called? Anyway, people, you run into a big problem at work, you're not making any progress, none of your friends are helping you. You start to go to the forums, you start to post information. You typically try to sanitize the information. Every once in a while, someone gives up a little too much, they've been up a little too late, they're trying to get a deadline met. All that stuff can be scraped super easily. Right? Yeah. You find out what technologies you use. And that's been pointed out by Kevin Johnson in some of the courses I take. Not only do I know what you use, I know what you have the most trouble with. Right? I know it's broken. I know it's not fixed. I know it's not running. Right? So, yeah. Can you post your config file?
Yeah.
Anyway. So organizational deficiencies. That's also, we didn't mention this because, again, it's impossible to go through everything. We've droned on for too long. But job announcements, like when you're telling me what skills you need, there's certain things you probably just don't need to publish, right? Like, so giving me major and minor version numbers for the software you need me to run, or things you need me to install, or the actual make and model of the gear that you're working with. Probably don't need to put that stuff in the job announcement. That's going to cover it. Next slide. So,
I'll give you a couple seconds to write this down.
so we're gonna, yeah, we'll publish the talk later. But OSINT is it's kind of a blessing and a curse because there's just so much stuff out there. So all of the resources I've posted here, a lot of the techniques we talked about, a lot of the approach has been talked about by people who are much smarter than I am. So I've tried to provide those resources here. People have been doing it a lot longer. So Gabe doesn't have his stuff here. It's not online because he likes to make the note because he knows. Anyway, all these things are super interesting. If you have time and you're into OSINT, super interesting stuff. This one's actually really cool. This is written from a military perspective. Tells you all the different types of intelligence. Humans, SIGINT, intelligence. What's the NSA one? LoveInt. Have you guys heard of that one? Where the NSA dudes are using the resources to track their... Unbelievable. Anyway, next slide.
Okay. So, a couple shameless plugs. B-Sides is coming up. You guys should all go to that. If you're not signed up already, keep checking if you want to get in that free class they're doing on Friday. The web link keep dropping. I don't know if you get emails saying it's open, so just keep Phil just dropped out so you can see it. So you can see that. So that's what it is. One of our guys, Ryan Wincy, is wicked smart. He's talking about Java shellcode. Let's do a brief thing on that. Does everybody know about shellcode? How you put shellcode into things? Right, so it's never been done before directly in Java the way we do it. We found a flaw in Java that cannot be fixed, it cannot be patched. The
core way the JVM, which is Java, the way it works. The only way to fix it would be to rebuild an entire new JVM from scratch, which takes a couple minutes. So yeah, it's just account based. So we can execute directly from Java, which is neat, kind of a big deal. I got really excited about it. So that should be a pretty good talk that's out there. That's going to be a good one. Mike Resky, he's actually doing 2 talks. He's doing a talk tomorrow at Montessori, down somewhere, I forget where it's at. What's that? East Cooper, that's good. You're not going to go, I'm sure, but it's his soon-to-be fiance teaches there, and he's going to propose to her. My wife and I actually came up with this idea. So they're going to have a school assembly. The news crew is going to be there. We're going to give a talk to the 4th to 8th graders, I think, about the internet never forgets. Because nowadays, 4th grade is ridiculous, right? My kids aren't there yet, K-5, but holy crap, dude. Like they're already like talking and doing things. Oh man. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. So he's doing that tomorrow. He proposes his girlfriend. He's also going to talk about using multi-layer perceptrons. I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. That's what it is. To classify encrypted network traffic, right? Which is always the problem, right? Doing C&D, I just encrypted, you can't see me, right? You can't capture it, you can't break it. You can't break it, but you know what people do. It's got its own challenges associated with it. So this is the way to classify that and find bad guys without having to break it. And he's already made some pretty good work on this, and it's pretty rad, so check it out. So that's what we're doing, that's what's coming up. Last thing, wasn't as interactive as it could have been.
Did you have a question? I think I completely got sidetracked.
Well, just something on that picture, the hookah picture.
Hookah?
I've never seen that.
So hookah is like a,
You know what a bong is?
Okay, yeah.
There you go.
kind of
That's
like
the politically correct term.
It's a party ball.
I looked old, I figured.
Because it's got multiple ones.
no, it's all, they've been using them in India and all those places for thousands of years. I mean,
Water pipe.
yeah, it probably just isn't a good idea if you're a clear defense contractor to put that on the internet for people to see and talk about it. It's like this dumbass thing, smoke and everything. Come on, man. But anyways, that's what he does. Just keep that private. Don't take pictures. So yeah, did anybody learn anything today?
Yeah.
Anybody at all? Okay. So we like to make sure that we're at least, not just blathering on, we get something out there that's good for the community and learn. So would anybody interested in a follow-up to this? Wants to talk about the next phase of execution, because we can start putting it together. Okay, all right. Any questions? Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you talk about like employment opportunities and what you could do to prepare as far as like, I'm a student at Trident Tech. So.
The AHO, how do you hack the question, right? How do we get to the thing?
How do you get from school to a cybersecurity, network security company?
Yeah, so common question, right? There's a bunch of different ways you can say to do it. It really comes down to, you gotta have the formality, right? You gotta have your walking papers, which is the certs if you want to go to UD, 8570, right? You gotta have the things, have more than you need, right? Have at least your basics. If you want to do the computer security stuff, get something in the C&D realm. You can get the 8570 requirements online, get something that's in a C&D category. So something like CEH would probably do you because it fits all categories, security plus, right? So don't just, it's great you're getting a degree, right, at college, but nobody cares, right? Or, I mean, Phil's a doctor and nobody cares, right? It doesn't apply to what we do. I have a degree in business management, so who cares, right? So what you have to have is those certs, right? So those, but the bottom line is you got to know what the hell you're doing. Don't come in there and try to BS and talk through why do this and give the book answer, right? So how we talk to people, interview people, is give them a scenario and tell them what you would do. And you can easily tell right away if they're giving you a book answer, well, I would do the following things. You got to know how to put hands on keyboard and do it, right? And talk about it. There's a difference when you, like I said, when you talk to somebody and you're hearing book answer versus experience. Now, how do you get that experience? That catch-22, right? Unless you do it. There's been a lot of people that have wanted to get into this thing. We mentored a couple people at Spay War. Dude came over, was like, hey, I've been doing pen testing stuff. I want to mentor. I want you to be my mentor. I said, sure, man, I'll mentor you. Let's do this, right? I said, okay, cool. You're bring your gear over, man. We'll start rocking and rolling. We'll get on the lab, start doing stuff, right? So the first time he comes over, I said, okay, man, fire up your collie. I don't think collie was out there, so I think he said, fire up your backtrack image. Let's get rocking and rolling. He said, what's backtrack? I was like,
You say pen test?
okay, so backtrack is this. You know, I tried to be really nice. It's hard for me, so I tried to be really nice. I said, this is what backtrack is, right? Like, how do I run that? I can't reinstall it on a box. Like, what do you have, like VMware or anything like that? Didn't know what that was either, right? So, I mean, it went on for a while. I mentored him for his full time that he had money for, right? And at the end, he was like, so, you know, can I come on the team? I was like, look, dude, let me just put this plainly. You're not ready yet for this, right? There's like steps for the major leagues, minors, right? You've got to put in the time. You've got to put in the time on the keyboard to know this stuff. You can't just go into Kali and go to the tools and say DNS, click on Fierce and go, Fierce, CNN, go! And you think you know what Fierce does, right? Because you do that, you try to do a zone transfer, you pop a signature, and your boss gets really pissed off at you, and you're not allowed to touch the keyboard for a week, right? I mean, I've heard that happen.
I've heard.
To Gabe's point, what I discovered is this is, so I got into IT totally sideways. Came through a contractor. I was that guy who, you know, wasn't an IT guy. Everyone was super pissed. I was on the screen, didn't know what I was doing. So it's one of the most demanding disciplines I've ever come across. I mean, so there are certain jobs you come in, you do your work, you go home, you're done. To even have a chance to keep up, like Gabe said, you need to have hands on the keyboard all the time. I've stopped watching television. I've stopped doing all those things, all those time wasting things, because it's just not only is it going to take your time, but you have to have a passion for it. If you know if it's not kind of in your bones and in your blood, it's something you want to do. And I realized this when I was in grad school, right? Because I was getting my doctorate, I'd go to the lab, I'd do my work, I'd come home, and instead of picking up a paper that I needed to read and put in my bibliography, I would play chess or I would read philosophy books. And that should have been like my red flag, like, dude, you're getting a lifelong degree in this, what you doing? Right? So, but I ignored it. I just said, no, I'm going to finish this, right? So when I realized that I was going home, having dinner, putting Jack down, hanging out with Amy, and then when they all went to bed, I was back online, pounding on the keyboard, writing scripts, doing the work, and like being totally, I'm like, I have finally found my Rushmore, like this is it, I'm done, right? So having that approach to it, and it's more of a lifestyle. So to Gabe's point, fingers on the keyboard, right? There are steps, you have to build up to it. That was one of the things that became immediately obvious with Gabe, was like, you're not gonna, unless you have a passion for it, it's going to be really hard. You can do it, but it'll be really hard to have it be gratifying and be successful. Like you said, it's a
lifestyle thing. You don't get an opportunity to become a hacker. You don't get the opportunity, you are. Like, hacker's not something you do, hacker's something you are. And that's just something it's innate within you. You don't have to know, you have to know the tools, you don't know the techniques, you don't know the methodology, but you have to have the mindset, right? That's what hacking is. It's not, hacking is not a computer thing. That's what something you are, right? So when you come in and say, this is something I want to do, this is something I want to get into, you've already got off on the wrong step, right? It has to be something that you are, right? And that's just what you do. It becomes natural. If you don't know something, like the hacker mentality is, I don't know something, I find out how it works.
That's one of the big things, right? How does it work?
If I could add to that a little bit, it really helps to have operational experience from the making it work side. Yeah, because until you really understand how it works, you can't understand how to break it in a way that will do what you want it to do. Anybody can just, break stuff, but you need to break it in a way that benefits you.
Yeah, like they said, if I can chime in, right? It's the difference between sort of just being a script kiddie and running a tool that you don't understand what it's doing, and understanding the technology that you're actually trying to exploit and get around, right? So I mean, like, that's like, living it and breathing it is really just not allowing yourself to be satisfied with the user manual, right? That shows you how to operate something. Instead, you need to know how that machine works underneath and what the levers are that are flipping around. That's the mentality that lets you oh, okay, so now that I see below the black box what's inside it, it's much simpler than you might imagine, and now you can manipulate it. So that's
I liken it to a lot like Gabe's always reference to military infantry action, right? Everybody wants to go be Delta Force, Call of Duty, Black Ops, sneak it in, that's hacker. That job, that skill set, it's a lifetime effort. It starts at some point in your career, and then you love it so much, you change it, and nothing else matters. Everything comes into that focus. On that, not everybody makes it there, right? In the military, there are, I can't give you the exact number, but I can give you less than 500,000 people in the military. 1% of them are even in special forces. Of that 1%, it's 0.45 they're actually in an operator. Of that 0.45, one guy pulls the trigger. So down below, everything else that one guy does is supported by 100,000 other people doing their job. So what my team does is I don't have the resources and the capability to do what Gabe does. So what I do is I learn everything that Gabe knows, and I try to play defense. The only problem is, he has to find one hole, I have to plug 1,000. It's a lot more fun. You want to have your head on a swivel? Go play defense. Go play blue force against a red, active blue. Seeing them walking through and make a left or right pivot, and then you're just like, crap. Can I close this? No. Shit. Okay, how do I get him out? And I had Larry over here on a domain controller going, run script, oh crap, kill, bang. Run script, kill, back. Remote delete. Damn. Runs, damn. Can you make him stop, please? And he did this for like almost 45 minutes. So there's a lot more ways than just the cool hacker way to contribute. And we need, to be honest, the cool hacker way is one way, but we really need that. The security infrastructure needs a lot more people that know how to play defense, because what we have in DoD, take DoD for example, we have a lot of operational guys, and we have a lot of information assurance guys that say no. We have nobody in the middle that makes it work. So the operational guys make it work, kind of mitigate it some way, and then the reality is when he comes along, he goes like, dude, you've missed all this stuff. Not me.
You guys are probably going to really piss at me, but CNA, right? Everybody hates CNA people, right? But like, I never learned more than manually walking through the Linux stick by hand myself and doing system administrator tasks, right? Just maintaining that system and locking down the system and going, what in God's name is this saying? I've never even, this is like, having to realize, oh, that's what it does. That's why it's bad. Oh, okay. And then managing the system day to day, like you're talking about, right? It really starts to open your mind up. And like, then the next step is how can I use this, right?
Cyber is simpler when you know how every piece of IT works.
Those people are gods. If you can do assembly, more power to you.
The beauty now is that there's a bazillion facets of security. When you enter in the industry, you are not going to be doing, big dollar penetration testing. It's just not going to happen. But you find something that you enjoy. Maybe it's code security, maybe it's email security, and you become really good at it. Have 20 VMs that you run on your home workstations, and just understand how things are really supposed to work.
You'll never get bored, man.
Yeah.
There's so much minutia, it's awesome. You can go a mile deep on this tiny little thing, and there's millions of things like that. You'll never be bored. When you realize you'll never be bored for the rest of your life, it's like, I'm here, I'm not leaving yet.
Don't be afraid to venture off on different topics as you're doing it too, as you're learning. Because one of the big things, if you're just a script kiddie and you go and Johnny Long or Kevin Mitnick or whoever wrote something and you run it and you got into their system, now what do? Right? You're in the system, you have access, but you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know what the next step is. Cool, I got in. Now I'm just sitting there. Right? So you want to understand what to look for, how to find it, and walk through the system. So the best way to do that is to really take the time, like many people have already said, and learn it. And learn it from it. Yeah.
Compete in as many CTFs as you can. I have them online all the time.
And be flatly defeated for quite a while before you start not being embarrassed.
Open CTF at DEF CON every
year.
year.
Yeah, but to Gabe's, well, yeah, so we get in trouble all the time. CTF is not my red team. CTF, we get yelled at for trying to apply CTF principles to what we do. It's a huge no-no, but if you just want to get a feel, if you want to compress the timeline and get a feel for what it's like to get into systems and get after interesting data and get the good and get out, CTF is a fun way to, it's not apply, but it's a good way to keep, what do they call it, it's a good way to sharpen the sword.
It's like crack for hackers.
Keep your skills up, learn new stuff. Like we all did the NY, what is it, the New York Poly CTF, where like there's 10,000 competitors. And I spent all my time trying to figure out what this Python code, how it was encrypting something. Like, so we came with like, I didn't solve it, but I came away knowing a hell of a lot more about Python and some of its libraries. So that was my weekend. So I didn't mean to, it doesn't apply, right?
No, but like something like Metasploit said, I could be a game, something Metasploit just said, what do you do when you get in there and move around and do stuff, right? That was a really good point because it applies back to our passive recon stuff we talked about, right? So this doesn't just apply for your first phishing attack. What we talked about today, right? Once we get in and get access, all of that recon, all of that stuff we did gives us direction. We know we'll be in further talks, but it gives us direction once we get in together. We know exactly where to go, exactly what we want to see, what we're targeting, what we're after. We know all that before we can get it and shell and get into the target area, right? That guides us forward for the entire assessment.
We do have to wrap this up, but I just want to throw out there that everything they did is free. And everything except for a couple TOC violations is legal. So you can go and practice all this stuff. Go home, go to Goodwill and buy a $30 computer. It's a security, and you'll be shocked at the things that are running on your home network. It's very low barrier to entry right now. If you're interested, if you really want to talk more about this, come hang out on the Charleston-ISSA IRC channel, and I'll talk to anybody all day about how to better join the community.
It may be a violation of terms of service, but don't think for a minute that there isn't a battalion of English-speaking Chinese people who are doing precisely this all day, every day. Hundreds of them. If I just put a couple of doofuses in a hot, sweaty room, right? This is what we can do. Just imagine what battalions can do.
Your case study LinkedIn is fairly similar to the group that's been very active lately.
Really?
So when you say you try to emulate the trade craft of our adversaries,
It was funny that before you guys did the other day, LinkedIn and some of the things they were using to target, it's kind of a real game. You can use that and find us.
That's what's so frustrating about red teaming is that there's scope and there's rules and there's laws and there's bosses and there's none of that crap. Just have no restrictions whatsoever. That's why it's so hard to defend, right? To your point, this is why it's so difficult to be a blue teamer, which is that row in the back, which is the only reason we exist.
I think they over time, so
They both have their caveats, for sure.
And don't be afraid to say, I don't know.